am Precious Mzea Sakaleshi. Good evening and thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the Worldwide Fund for Nature special program on Camnet TV, not just another channel. Now, Worldwide Fund for Nature is an international non-governmental organization that has been involved in various conservation activities to conserve the biodiversity upon which the nation's economy and livelihood largely dependent. So we'll be talking about different topics and the current campaign, which is Earth Hour. We'll get to find out more about that, but just a glimpse. It's, I would say, a campaign that encourages individuals, communities, businesses to actually switch off non-essential lights. We'll get into that later on, and also the environmental programs that have been put in place to support the campaigns that are currently going on in the WWF organization. So I will have guests coming through later on to get deep into all that. For now, we take a break and the conversation begins on the other side.
This is Camnet TV World News. For a prompt response, call +2609 53 995 099 or +2609 62 444 726 or +2609 711 77467. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
I'm Ambassador Frank Mutsubila. My 50 years journey in the media has now taken me to Camnet Television. I'm very excited to join this amazing inner family. The importance of governance issues cannot be overemphasized. Every Tuesday at 20:45, I'll be going under the skin of a governance issue with my guest. I'll be interrogating the guest so that you can make an informed decision. I'll be coming on every Tuesday at 20:45 with Frank on Camnet.
Welcome back. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the Worldwide Fund for Nature special program, and I mentioned that I'll be having special guests on set to tell us more about the current campaigns that are going on. So joining me on set, I will do the ladies first. We are joined by Ms. Isabel Mkelebai, who is the Government Relations and Strategic Partnership Manager. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Precious. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And also not forgetting the gentleman we have on set, Mr. Gary Masano, who is Programs Manager at Hot FM. Good evening and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, thank you, and good evening, our listeners.
Yes, now quickly getting into, before I ask this second question, you're currently running a campaign which is called Earth Hour, which advises individuals, communities and businesses to actually switch off non-essential lights, if I'm not mistaken. So now let's get into what is Earth Hour from the WWF.
Okay, so Earth Hour, if we were to really think about it, it's basically a moment. It's a moment where we all stop and think about the earth, the place we call home. It's that moment where we are drawing attention to the ordinary citizen about the role that they can play by using the power of their voice to speak up for nature. And basically this year, the theme is Speak Up for Nature. So why do we need to speak up for nature? There's so many things that happen around us that nature cannot speak for itself around. And when we look at the increasing human footprint, on the earth, we see quite a lot of destruction, but understandably so. The reason we would see this kind of human impact, increased human footprint, is because generally we are trying to make ends meet. We depend on our natural resources for our livelihoods. We depend on our natural resources for our food. So as we do that, there's been a lot of degradation that has happened over time. And if you look at some of the work that WWF has done, scientific assessments do show us that over the last 51 years, for example, there's been significant impacts to that biodiversity arising from the fact that natural habitats have been lost, critical natural habitats are being lost. And so if our biodiversity is going down, our climate impacts are rising, then we are in a crisis. And more recently, we are seeing the impact of that redefined relationship through health pandemics. So the world right now is facing three critical things: a rapid loss of nature, which compromises greatly our opportunity and our ability to be able to sustain ourselves. We are dealing with the climate crisis, and we're also now dealing with the health pandemic. So Earth Hour really is that campaign that is looking at, the engagement of civic action by amplifying voice towards protecting the earth, protecting nature, because there are benefits when we do that.
Okay, great. Now, during this campaign, what is Earth Hour trying to achieve, considering the fact that there's a call to switch off lights for at least 60 minutes, which is an hour? What is it trying to achieve? What's the aim for the campaign?
Okay, so generally, we are trying to raise consciousness around certain specific challenges that now we see in Zambia. The whole problem of load shedding is a big one. So energy security for the country is a very big issue right now. But you do know that 97% of our installed hydropower is actually coming from hydro sources. So that means that there's a very clear relationship between water and energy. Yeah? But because of where we are at, the impacts of climate and so on and so forth, there is also additional thinking that must be applied. It is about saving the energy that you already have. It is also about diversifying, using cleaner forms of energy. So the campaign is really trying to say, with the whole problem of load shedding that we have, one of the most immediate actions that we must take, or practice or culture as Zambians, is to look at how to save energy. So when we are sitting in a room like this and we don't need so much lighting, you can switch it off and save, reduce the pressure on the national grid. That in itself contributes towards, improving our energy situation. But in addition to that, we're basically saying the country needs to transition to consuming cleaner forms of energy, which is solar, wind, renewable options, so to say.
Okay, so now for those of you that are just joining us, this is the WWF, which is Worldwide Fund for Nature Zambia, and we're having a conversation just to get to know more about the campaigns that are currently running. And if you had joined us at the beginning of the show, I introduced you that I'm on set with Mr. Gary Masano and also Miss Isabel Mkelebai. Now, Mr. Gary Masano, coming to you, considering the fact that you're coming from a media house, and how has it been partnering with WWF and airing programs that actually talk about environment?
Well, thanks a lot. Our partnership with WWF has been a good one over the years, and for us being a media house, with the information that we share that the WWF have come through on the platform, it comes as for radio being a tool that it is, a powerful tool that it is, we feel for us it's a service to the listener, because they need to know what's best moving forward. So we have our weekly programs that we do with the WWF, and in those We've had topics of where they show off natural resources that the country has to offer, and those natural resources that we have to preserve. So every week when we come through, there's always something new to learn, and always knowing that this is what the country has to offer, and it's a natural resource that we have to preserve. So that partnership has come in beneficial to both us, Hot FM, and to them as well, because we get to speak to people out there, and beyond the weekly programs, our programming also is in a way that we sort of like share to talk about what we learn from those particular programs. Going forward, obviously it goes beyond the particular programs that are tailored for weekly. And also, like Isabel has said, we're living in the different times now. Load shedding, in the past few years, things have been tough. They haven't been easy. It's only recently that maybe things have sort of like loosened up. But that also is a message to all of us to say we need to look out for our natural resource, and that natural resource goes beyond water. There's so many other things that we need to look out for. And also, I mean, the fact that the last year or so, the pandemic hasn't been easy. It has come through at the time that we all didn't expect, and that has sort of like changed our behaviors. We've found ourselves staying indoors more, and with staying indoors, you tend to do things that you didn't plan to do previously. And one of which is obviously if you're going to be home, you want to stay home and switch on your TV, entertainment. So that aspect comes in, and it also affects the nature at the end of the day. So with this in mind, and with the Earth Hour that is coming on Saturday, it's a message to say, okay, if we can do this in 60 minutes, how far can we go with it? What else can we do? What can we do in finding alternative ways of us having lights in our homes? Because it's not only through your water or whatever ways that you can find in terms of what might affect the nature. There's so many ways that people can find ways of how they can keep themselves entertained when they stay home. So this time is critical, and if you check like this past few days, we've been giving campaigns, obviously looking forward to the Earth Hour, which everyone is excited with, because now you're thinking, oh, okay, let's see how this goes. Those that have never done it before, they're like, oh, so we're going to switch off for 60 minutes,
a whole hour.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For others, they're like, I can't do this, but we have to do it. So I think it's something exciting to look forward to, and it's also it's a learning process for each one, for all of us, be it adults, children, because also when you speak about this and we share it on radio being a tool that it will speak to children, and kids will be thinking like, oh, okay, so if we do this, what are we trying to serve? And kids will always ask questions. So when they ask the questions, they need to be given the right answers. Okay, we are doing this because we want to preserve our natural resources. So partnering with WWF has come in at a time where it's been beneficial, both to them, to us, and to, at the end of the day, it's the general populace.
Okay, now looking at the fact that it's a media house we're talking about, so we have a huge target that we're trying to reach out to. How has been the response? Because if I put myself in the other shoes and I'm listening to radio and someone who's talking about trees, climate change, and conservation and stuff like that, how has been the feedback from the public?
I'll give you an example. Not to digress, but it's still talking about nature. There's been talk about deforestation.
Yes.
Areas in the country that have been very debatable and controversial. We've had topical issues on that. There's one particular area called the Lusaka Forest Reserve number 27. People have spoken. You can tell how passionate they are, because they know what importance that particular natural resource is. So you can see it from there, and it's through media that we can speak about it, get it out there for people to understand what role it plays in terms of the system. They say it's a water aquifer, and the role that it plays in terms of how we can preserve our water. So just from there you can tell that people do care about our natural resource, but are we doing enough? So as media, that's our job, is to make sure we keep spreading the word. Oh, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. And with partnering with WWF it's something that it always keeps as a reminder, because there are times that, because when you have your power, like now we're talking that load shedding has sort of like gone down, you get comfortable. But with the WWF coming through, it always works as a reminder, like, okay,
A wake-up call.
we are here, we need to take care of our natural resource. We shouldn't get comfortable. We should find ways of alternative energy. And the Earth Hour plays that part, because I know when we say we'll switch off, but I'm sure people will find ways of how they'll have some minimal light.
Yes.
Maybe there'll be phones there, or ways of maybe someone used a solar to charge their battery for a light that they'll use on that day. So that time sort of like reminds us to say we can actually find alternative ways of energy, of lights in our homes, so that we preserve our natural resource.
Okay, so now I have noted two words, which is deforestation and clean energy. Why are we singling out these two?
Okay, so first of all, deforestation is one of the reasons that we are losing most of the natural habitats that we have. I did talk about the fact that when you look at the Zambian economy, our biodiversity is basically the bedrock of this economy, because many of the things that we do economically are centered around our biodiversity. In addition to that, Zambia is indeed a water economy. Almost all the economic sectors that you are going to touch will require water. Your mines will need water, your agriculture will need water, your energy requires water. There's no sector that does not require water. So therefore, when we look at the value that we attach to these resources, like Gary was talking about, there are certain fundamental things that we need to understand there. One, that protection of these resources means building our own economic capacities and capabilities, and being able to value some of this natural capital puts us in a position of strength rather than disempowering us. So when we look at over the years how we have lost some of these natural habitats, there are certain wetlands in Zambia that are almost at the point of being lost, such as the Lukanga. But when you look at the value of the Lukanga is so significant for so many things. One, groundwater. Groundwater is very, very important when you look at the role that the Lukanga is playing, and quite a number of studies have shown why that is the case. Surface water as well. Hydropower. Okay. That wetland basically also functions as a filter for mining pollutants. Okay. But it has degraded over time. Many, many years ago in the Lukanga, you used to have animals. You don't have animals anymore.
You don't see them anymore, yeah.
So deforestation, why we're picking on deforestation is because this is where we seem to have a bigger problem. Yeah, because most of the forest cover is being lost. Annually, we are losing like 270,000 hectares of forest cover every single year. So if we are to look at the next 10 years, how much forest cover do you think we are losing? Quite significant. When we look at the statistics in Africa, we are ranked first for having the highest rate of deforestation. And like I said, the drivers for this deforestation are many. If we look at charcoal burning, it is a form of livelihood. It's one of the reasons we are losing a lot of our forests. And if you look at the way we are consuming charcoal now, charcoal is consumed because it is seemingly a low cost form of energy. For middle income households, they will use it. And actually, just to mention that the market where charcoal is going is the urban space. And the country is consuming almost 4 million tons of charcoal every year. That's a lot. Okay? But the impact of that, and this is what WWF tries to show, that when you look over time at the economic implication or impact of some of these things that we are doing, including the loss of our biodiversity, there have been studies that are showing that by 2050 we could lose, the economic impact of all this could go up to about $10 trillion in loss if we do nothing about it globally. That's a lot of money. And you must understand also that deforestation is very much linked also to water security. Because if people are encroaching in areas that are protecting water catchments, it means that the water sources are going to degrade. The water catchments themselves are degrading. And once that happens, there is a disturbance to the natural flow of the water in the river system. And so what we begin to see now is that when the trees are being cut down recklessly, the soils become loose. So there's a lot of soil erosion that will go into the river. Eventually the river stops flowing. So when your rivers stop flowing, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because already in Zambia there are rivers that have dried out. The Magoya River is an example of that. Another river that is highly sensitive to that kind of human activities, where people are doing farming along the riverbank. They're even going into the riverbed itself and doing this farming, is the Luangwa. It is also one of those rivers right now that has got a very high sediment load. The other river we should really be concerned about is, and ensure that there is no deforestation or the forest around it is not lost, because if it does get lost, there will be a very serious problem in terms of energy security and water security, is the Kabongo. As you know, that's the headwaters of the Zambezi. And already in the northwestern region of this country, we do see growing investment, foreign direct investments, large-scale developments that are going there. Nothing wrong with that, except that the environmental impact and adaptive measures must really be strong. So in short, the whole sustainable development kind of approach is really required. The green factor is important. Otherwise, we may not have, as much resources as we think we actually have if we continue in the trajectory that we are on. And so that's the reason why for this Earth Hour, we are trying to raise consciousness about, one, the devastating impacts of deforestation, so that people can understand these are the statistics that you have at play. And so if we fully understand the impact of what that actually means, then you and I can do something about it, Precious, because we don't want our future generations to wake up one day and have to start looking for water from our neighbors, when we are said to have 40% of all this water, in the SADC region here. And I've always said, we are probably that country that will be very quick to talk about the abundance of these natural resources without fully understanding what currently is at play, because we are almost saying with one hand that we have so much, but on the other hand, we take mercilessly without taking care really of these natural resources. And so Earth Hour, like I said, is about voice. It's about saying, what can we do together, Gary, myself, yourself, and others, to begin to reverse these impacts so that we can have a better society, a better Zambia, a more resilient society.
Okay, Mr. Masano, any contribution on that?
I think what's key, like with media coming into play in all of this, is us getting such numbers out there for people to understand that this is the situation. Now, when I say people, I mean it from the top, from the government's point of view, to understand, oh, this is where we are, because policies come into play when we talk about some of these things, like she spoke about, people encroaching into areas that they're not supposed to, and you expect authorities at some point to step in and say, okay, you can't be in this area, there has to be control. And then also to that household, to that person, to me, I also need to understand, because it's the small steps that will kill or preserve. So it needs to start from that person, yourself, to say, oh, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'll start with clean energy. This is how I'm going to move. I will stop. You can start slowly. I mean, it's not easy. What we've noticed, that the challenge that we've heard from the masses out there when we have sit-down discussions with the experts, they come and explain these things, is that they'll tell you, for me to get, for example, solar energy, it's expensive for me to start. Like getting to acquire a panel, batteries, inverter, they'll tell you that it's expensive. So it's slow steps. But you see, you will say it's expensive at first when you're acquiring it at first. But once you have it, what you'll be preserving quite a whole lot beyond all of that. So that's the message that we keep trying to share when you're on our platforms, because it's the small steps that will make a difference. And people need to understand that, let me start, I get a one plate stove, I'll start using gas. That's clean energy, because then you will preserve, like Isabel said, charcoal. You will not be buying charcoal, you will be using your gas stove. From there you move, okay, I use this X amount of lighting. You can go out there, you check what's available that can work for you to use to light your home. So that's the message that we keep trying to share as media, and also we're playing our part in that way. And for us, that has seemed like it's a situation that is really helping, because the more we talk about that, the more we're trying to get the message out there to someone to understand that that's the best way.
Okay, now looking at time, I know we said 30 minutes, but you see what I told you now, it's supposed to be the minutes. Now, we have spoken more on Earth Hour being the campaign, but what is WWF doing to combat deforestation in Zambia?
Well, we're doing quite a lot and working largely through partnerships. At the moment, we've got a partnership or a memorandum of understanding with the Forestry Department, where we are trying to do very specific interventions around reforestation in the Silawana complex, because that area is quite degraded in terms of forests, and so there are specific programs there that are trying to regenerate forests that have been lost, and we are doing this jointly with the Ministry of Lands through the Department of Forestry. We actually launched a large-scale program, the Forestry and Land Restoration Program, that is implementing key activities in that area. In addition, I think we've been strong in terms of working through policy, again through the government, specific memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Water, and again collaborating with the Ministry of Lands for the protection of wetlands. Like I said, right now we are working to support the government in the development of a conservation plan for the Lukanga. Like I singled it out, it's one of those wetlands that is highly degraded, and the issue of loss of forest there is an issue. We are working also to create a higher level of consciousness in terms of civic awareness, and doing the Earth Hour campaign, as we are doing now, is part of the efforts that we are doing. We are also forming alliances with other actors to really reassess the situation on forestry, and it is our desire as WWF to really look at most of the dynamics around forestry, which means that promoting alternative forms of livelihoods is one of the things that we are very strong at. So we are promoting alternative forms of livelihoods that are also maximizing the opportunities for non-timber products, so that local communities can reduce their dependence, on trying to harvest or over-harvest, forests, but focus more on alternatives for their livelihoods that would still give them an income, but provide a clear incentive for them to participate in protecting their forests. I'm sure you know that the Zambian government is also promoting a very clear model for communities to manage the forest resource. And so part of the effort there is to strengthen elements around that in partnership to see how we can support government around that. So these are some of the activities that we are doing at institutional level. And more generally, really, when it comes to the community level, we are supporting and promoting the full implementation of the community-based natural resource management approach or model. in the landscapes that we work in. So we do think that it's very effective. You see, for you to sustain any investment around the management of natural resources on the ground, you have to create space for communities. So we can talk about all the forests, we can talk about all the water, but the solutions really are lying right at the community level. And even in the urban space, we see the same challenge. There are a lot of high-level discussions that will happen around, people planting trees and so on. But if people don't appreciate the importance of keeping green spaces in urban places like Lusaka, and taking individual action to say, I'm going to plant a tree here, I'll nurture it, I'm going to keep a green space here, it means those things just remain on paper. They don't really get actualized because people don't understand the value. And this is one of the things that Gary spoke about earlier, that part of building a stronger culture around understanding these issues we are discussing today is about helping people to understand the value of their natural resources. As long as those things don't happen, it's very difficult. And so if you look at even our constitution, it does talk a lot about protecting our natural resources. And I want to believe that the reason that might be the case is that there is an intrinsic value in our natural resources. In fact, for us at WWF, we like to think that our natural resources are our identity. If you talk about the Mosotunia Falls, you will identify it with Zambia. If you talk about certain specific species like the Kafiwa, it's endemic to Zambia. You will not find it anywhere else. So there is a particular identity and a uniqueness of the Zambian people associated with its natural resources. And I think we should never shy away from building a stronger understanding of that value and inculcating that in our culture, in our everyday practice. The fact that we are asking people to switch off their lights for 1 hour, like Gary said, is an opportunity to reflect. It's actually a very deep process. People would think about it like, oh, okay, why are they? But it's very, very deep because it's uniting us. It's bringing us to a place where we're saying, look, united, we can address, we can overcome the challenge of climate. We can begin to reverse the impacts of the kind of rapid nature loss we are seeing in Zambia. And I think for me, if we can get our future generations to fully appreciate that value, they'll be in a better place than we are.
Okay, great. Now, coming back to you, Mr. Masano, I know there's someone out there who's been hearing that there's a program running that talks about environment and all. What days and what times do they come, so that before I actually let you go?
Okay.
Yes.
This program comes on Fridays at 7:45. Yeah, it's a 15 minutes program. And in there is, I did mention earlier, it's different subjects that will have different topics and different speakers. Those, and it's not always that they're in the studio. Like what we had COVID over the last few months, so we used to do online or via phone. But many a times, it's because the people we are speaking to are in those particular areas. Either they are in the Western Province and they're speaking about a place where they are and how great this place is. So it's very insightful when we have those programs and speaking to the people that are actually in those particular areas. Yeah, so it's Fridays at 7:45, and then sometimes we would have space shows where when we do sort of like outside broadcasts, when they gather as WWF with the different stakeholders and those that work for WWF, they meet in one place to sort of like share what they're trying to do maybe in the next quarter or in the next year or things like that. And we're happy as OTFM to have been a part of all of that, because like I said earlier, again, it reminds us of what we have, or in Isabeau's words, what we think we have, maybe we've lost. So all of that is what the program is all about.
So Friday 07:45 for 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So now, Ms. Mkelebai, coming back to you, how can we join in the commemoration of Earth Hour?
Okay. So symbolically, Earth Hour, the switch-off event, main switch-off event is at East Buffalo, 27th March at exactly 20:30 p.m. That means at that hour for 60 60 minutes, we are asking people to switch off their lights, to stand in solidarity with us, and speak up for nature, actually. So people can participate in different ways. Just like
Does that mean
said,
me switching off my phone? Just checking.
They can do a lot of things, like if you keep your lights off for 1 hour, you're probably thinking, what will I be doing in the dark?
Yeah, but I'm just thinking that it would be good to completely switch off so that we reflect.
Right. So they can actually switch off completely, go outside, look at the stars outside.
Sit in the lawn.
Yes, you can do all that. Just stay away from, keeping your lights on, and do something to stand in solidarity with us. Switch off your appliances, the ones that you don't. In fact, if you can do it for more than an hour, the better. But like we said, you can play a game. You can use that moment to reflect. Talk about nature. Talk about these things we've just spoken about. Reflect a little bit. Is it true that every household can actually do away with charcoal? Is it in the Zambian situation? A challenging one, because we love braais, we love all these things, and so on and so forth. But as we do this, let me just be very clear, because I don't want perhaps to again misrepresent. We are very much alive to the fact that the reason why we may see an overconsumption of charcoal is because there is a very real energy need. So many households may not be at that level where they can afford even the other options that we were talking about. But there is a process to it. And we think that as the policy framework is beginning to change, we would be expecting that over time, the cost of, for example, LPG gas, it comes down. That with more consumption of that, then it means that we could get, lower prices for some of these things. But we are just also very much alive to the fact that if we remain where we are by justifying the situation, it doesn't position us well. And so I think that the Earth Hour moment, 27th March, will be that apex moment where Zambians can join in. And so if you go to our Facebook page, we're extremely delighted that we've got influencers that have supported Earth Hour. They're actually speaking up. Mwaka Mugala, Tisa the Trend Center, Simon Mwalimu. These have actually come out very clearly and said, we will support this. So, like our page, upload a video of yourself doing something. Yes. Send us a message about nature. Tell us what you would like government to do to improve the energy situation. Tell us something that just says, I am committed. I may not have the resources to move away from where I am, but I'm committed. I'd like to see this. I think that in itself is important in trying to get us to start building a movement. And that's what we are looking for. To build a critical mass of people who understand the urgency for action on deforestation and on the use of clean energy.
Okay, so we have unfortunately run out of time. I was enjoying this. I had so many questions I needed to ask. Mr. Masano, your last remarks in 30 seconds.
Yeah, quickly. For me, it's I think we all just need to be alive to the cause. It's all for our own good. It's all for generations to come. So whatever we do now, I think it's key. Like I said earlier, the kids, we are planting something in them for them to understand that this is what it is. So even on Earth Hour, let's go get out with them, go to arcades, to East Park, and make them understand that, okay, this is for this. If they ask all the questions, let them understand that this is what we're doing because we want to preserve our natural resources.
Okay, great. Ms. Mkelebai, 30 seconds, closing remarks.
Thank you so much. So I would only just say that as Zambians, I know that we're very patriotic. And for anything that we really fully understand, we will always jump on board to support. And I think we can only say that these are important matters, and WWF remains committed to providing space and information to the general public in terms of the things around nature. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you for coming through.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we have come to the end of the program. Thank you for joining me. I am Precious Nzeya Sakaleji, and you're watching the Worldwide Fund for Nature Zambia special program. And I was joined in by Mr. Gary Masano and also Miss Isabel Mkelebai. From me and the entire crew is have a beautiful day and stay tuned for the news coming through at 19:30. Good evening.